Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the Great Debate, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the Great Debate Professor Dr. AAl-Hadid, formerly from Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. AAl-Hadid, you've been with us many, many times, and yes, I think that for most of our audience, you really need no introduction, literally. But in case there might be a few people who might not have seen you within this context before, let's have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the experiences before becoming involved with the topic, the Great Debate this morning. Then we'll talk about, by the end of at that time, it should be time for the first commercial break, and then we'll get into the second segment dealing almost exclusively with the Great Debate, as well as that last 10-minute segment. Let's do it from that perspective.
Well, I would like to start with the idea that I'm originally from Montgomery, Alabama, and my consciousness in terms of becoming aware of social issues and culture came about by participating in the civil rights movement there in Montgomery. I came of age between the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 and the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965. And it was through that experience that I came to understand injustice. I came to understand the nature of the struggle. In fact, it led me to understanding how you take basic Christian principles and apply them to social change when I was a student there at Alabama State. I left Alabama State and went out on the West Coast, and that took me to another level. At that point, I became in contact more with people, nationalistic thinking and more Islamic thinking. So out of that experience, I moved over and became Muslim. I was a missionary Baptist and I became Muslim. Went to Africa, traveled extensively through Africa, mainly in Kenya, East Africa, Nigeria and West Africa, and some other countries. And I made the pilgrimage to Mecca in 1969 and finished my doctorate, came to Tennessee State in 73. And I stayed at TSU for 35 years. And then I did a brief period as a principal of a local Islamic school, the Nashville International Academy. And so that's pretty much my academic and activist resume.
So in the real sense, Dr. AAl-Hadid, you've been involved in some way, one way or the other, dealing with civil rights, the activities involved in human rights and et cetera, almost all of your life. Is that right?
Yeah, I was born and bred and
struggled with that. And I think, as you said, between what the bus boycott,
Montgomery bus boycott,
and the
55,
Selma in 65.
65, right.
That decade, which was a powerful decade in the history of the United States, not only in the history of black folks in the United States, but in the history of the United States in a real sense, especially dealing with the suffrage. And I think that that's still one of the most important things that we can talk about today, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about that. But in a real sense, this is basically what we wanted to do, to sort of get that information. And as we said, you've been with us on many, many occasions, and each time we get the same kind of basic information, but there are some other things that we really didn't pull out during that first time. And so you made the whole round in a real sense, and we're certainly delighted to have you here to talk about what we consider to be one of the most important topics, and that's the Great Debate. We've got about a minute and a half before this segment ends. Why don't you sort of give us an overview of what do we mean really when we talk about the Great Debate?
Well, as we defined it at Tennessee State, the Great Debate is a culture and intellectual forum within which we debated contemporary social issues. The goal was to try to find a synthesis between the philosophies and the theology of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and try to find where they came together in common unity and harmony. Because historically, a lot of people felt that they were so different that they didn't have anything in common, but as they progressed in the struggle, you find that they start to converge and they came closer together. So our goal in the Great Debate was try to figure out how can you unify these two philosophies, these two theologies, and then apply those principles to contemporary social issues.
And you've also, I think, started to apply the Great Debate